hear you okay.
Okay, so Jan and I will go ahead and start at least the conversation while we try to troubleshoot. And as our other folks join in, we'll make sure that we bring them into the conversation. So first of all, I'm Cherise Stokes. I'm the Executive Director of Tech MGM. But more importantly, I'm an IT professional in this industry and certainly have a great opportunity to bring some other really remarkable IT professionals to the conversation so that we could talk about some of the industry perspectives that we see with how it relates to computer science and information technology. So before we get a chance to bring everybody on, let me just introduce some of the folks that you'll have an opportunity to hear from. Quincy Miner, who's actually with Unity Fiber. Quincy's been in Montgomery for quite some time, doing some remarkable work on the network systems engineering side of the house, but does it not only at a city, state, local level, but also does it from a federal perspective and certainly within education. Then we also have Trey Hayes, who's with Alabama Power Company. Trey is awesome. Worked with him for several years. He does a lot from an innovation space, and even though he's an Alabama grad, he's a good guy and does a tremendous amount for the community. And then we also have Tanya Lambert. Tanya recently retired from the Air Force, doing great work here in Montgomery, but actually has traveled all over and bringing her expertise back to the Alabama area because she's an Alabama native, but certainly has a great understanding the software development side, but also how we really push the needle with respect to innovation and from a federal perspective. And then last but not least, who we'll talk to first is Jan Johnson. Jan, local to the community, done some great work in project management, program management, software engineering, and especially agile software. And so as we talk about some of the new trends, Jan will be able to give us some remarkable experiences as well as some best practices on what they've seen in the software development realm, Alaskan North Star. So let's get into some of our first quick questions. And Jan, I'll ask you this because one, I know that you've been on the hiring side when it comes to looking at computer scientists and IT professionals. What skills are you seeing that are used the most right now?
So I think that's a really good question considering I just did this transition to a new role. So I'm seeing a different side of what we are seeing as demands in the workforce. But one thing that I've seen consistently, the trend has been there's some level of development kind of problem solving type skill set that STEM normally teaches us. One of the things I'm seeing a lot is kind of hard to find is what does it look like as we start to enter this realm with cloud computing? So cloud computing is something very specialized, but something that all of us have access to. But what we're finding is not many people are really going after the skill sets that surround cloud computing unless there's an actual demand on a particular job requirement. However, these are skill sets that all of us, even at the youngest age, can go and start self-teaching. There are a lot of resources, and I think that's the biggest gap that I'm seeing right now. A lot of entry into cloud, but there are a lot of resources. And so there's that gap that we have to figure out how do we solve the workforce being prepared to enter into that new realm of IT and computing, but making sure they're equipped with it. And so that we as employers don't have an expectation up front that we're going to find a wide resource pool of people with these skills. That's probably the biggest thing that I can say.
So we've talked a lot, and I know we've talked in the Computer Science Summit before about problem-solving skills.
Yes.
One of the
Yes.
things that I think is interesting about that, and you alluded to this, is when they're introduced to those. And
Yeah.
because I know you have little ones,
Yes.
and I do too, although mine is not as little as yours, I think what we tend to look at is the fact that sometimes those skills, you're waiting to teach them until they're in that high school level. Talk a little bit about how important it is to introduce early on in your, maybe K through 3 grades, being able to
Absolutely.
introduce the problem solving skills, and then how it really starts to affect what it looks like on that middle high school level and certainly collegiate and those professionals that you're looking to hire.
Absolutely. So think at the very youngest, and I'm talking not even preschool, grade school. I'm talking whenever children are able to play on their own, they go through some type of problem solving on their own. It's just naturally how we progress as we get older. That translates into something that's more technology based as they're introduced to technology. So I will say if a child is old enough to operate an iPhone, a tablet, a smartphone, it's not too early to introduce them to some of these more fundamental skills. How do we learn best as we're younger? We learn through play, correct? Well, there are a lot of resources out there, code.org, lots of more visual based programming, Blockly. Those resources are there to help us learn through play. When you're introducing at a much younger age, so Sharice, I'm glad you gave a little context in how I'm more familiar with some of these, not just from an employer, but as a mom, as a parent. My kids were introduced to these things before they were introduced in the school system. Well, it's because there is some level of problem solving in everything that we do. What better way to introduce it and make it not so much of a task or something that's associated with education and learning under the covers it is, but it's through play. Um, so when we talk about age, I don't think there is age that's too young. And I've seen that evidence through my own children and how we've introduced them to learning in more of the STEM technology and problem solving and coding at a very young age.
Great. So I'm going to try this only because I can't hear, but I know that there's some good points that Tanya could add to this. So for instance, just recently, Montgomery had the opportunity to announce its partnership with Ed Farm. Ed Farm is going to bring essentially equipment as well as training for teachers and coding for students into Montgomery Public Schools. With that, they're aimed at really looking at the middle schools. Tanya, I know because you're a mathematician at heart, truly tell us a little bit about how you see that early involvement, especially at that middle school age, with things like mathematics and robotics that help to build that IT professional that you're looking to hire.
I think Tanya's having a problem going off mute.
If you weren't able to since you're not able to get unmuted, I'll actually ask Quincy. Quincy, could you respond to that question just with respect to how we have the ability to teach that at an early age and looking at that middle school level, that robotics that help to build the engineers that you're looking to hire?
I think hopefully you can hear me. I think early adoption of problem solving skills and analytical skills is a great benefit to the footprint and the foundation to future leaders and our future engineers. Because one of the biggest things, like Jan said, is problem solving skills and analytical skills. Those are very important skills because you can't nowadays you can't teach a student a technology because by the time you get a curriculum, once you get an education plan in place and implement it within a school system, that technology is outdated. So instead of teaching a technology that will be outdated once they learn and get out of school, it'll be best to teach them a foundation of problem solving skills so they can be beneficial into the workforce. Because the workforce, the technology, and the environment is changing at a rapid pace. So we just got to make sure we teach them the foundation so they can be a great asset into the workforce going forward.
Thanks, Quincy. So even if you're talking about problem solving and you're talking about analytical skills and those thoughts, Trey, I'd like to ask you this because you deal a lot with not only innovation, but you're also dealing with the ability for people to be forward thinking. How are you able to find those skills in the folks that you're hiring?
Yeah, for us, the forward thinking process is vital for us because my team, we're working in the middle, we're a startup in the middle of a really big company, which has its backs to say the least. But, I think for my folks, having the ability to fail and fail early and fail often and fail forward is really vital to us, because we're creating something new. The partnerships that we're doing and the way we're approaching our business has never been done before. And so the worst thing that my folks can do is remain the same, or at best just repeat what we've done before. That's not innovation. The repeatable process is documented and fine, and that's great for the larger business. But for us, we need to be pushing. And so, to going back to some of the other colleagues on the panel, for me, having the skill set at an early age of, look, try things that make you uncomfortable, try things that you can fail at, get used to that, and get used to failing forward and building on that. And so the biggest problem we've had to conquer on our team, and it's something we deal with daily, is, look, we've never done this before. You are going to mess something up. And if you're not messing something up, we're not pushing hard enough. And so this all of my team are young. They were smart. They were kids. They were getting the A pluses. I don't know how I'm the team leader and they're not, but be that as it may, getting that in their mind, if we ain't going to make 100 on every test, and if not, if we do, that test is not hard enough. And so getting that ingrained into a larger educational system. I mean, my parents are teachers and that kind of stuff. It's just a delicate mix of getting used to failing often, and failing forward. I'm texting Sharice to let her know I'm done.
Thanks, Trey. So as you talked about, and Tanya has also put it in the chat, one of the things that she talked about is, that the public speaking, and then also English and the ability to write. I think, and we'll see where some students are great math, have great technical skills, but they're and be able to speak them clear to and or to write what they're doing. They just have difficulty doing that. Jan, would love for you to see the ability to translate those, but how important is that in your everyday field?
Absolutely. So one of the things we talk about are those soft skills, where sometimes it can be a challenge with very technical people. I can speak from experience. We have to pay attention to grooming and starting to help others understand how important the skills are to communicate with a team. You are great at what you do as an individual, but let's help share that greatness with the entire team. And I even saw somewhere, well, let's not call those soft skills. No, it is soft skills, but these aren't things that are taught in a book. These are not things that you can go through and get a certification or a lesson on. A lot of times I coach very technical people on this, and it's going back to some of the foundations for some of the people I like to read, like Brene Brown and Simon Sinek and people like that. Let's lean into what makes us uncomfortable. It means being able to have uncomfortable conversations. Trey talked about being able to fail. Well, how does a conversation on failure look like? How does encouragement look like with failure? So it's being able to communicate to a team, communicate. How are we clear with each other? To be clear is to be kind. You can't expect everyone to have the same level of technical ability, and it does not mean that everyone's not equally important to a task or a project if they don't. So what makes us great in approaching a problem is we have all very diverse and different perspectives for the problem. Communicating that and finding out how you work together is very important, because you can't always do it alone. One of the things about the soft skills and communication is, unfortunately, many of us don't encounter that until we actually have a college course on communication. And that's unfortunate. One of the things that I love about our school system is presentation is very important. Even at a very young age, children have to demonstrate what they've learned through visual, audio, through journaling. There are different ways to communicate, and I love that there are different school systems taking a chance and pushing that. And it's going back to making people uncomfortable. If you establish that early on, the discomfort really doesn't sit in that much. So it's important to start to make those soft skills the norm. And if it's just embedded in their everyday education, their everyday way of doing things and learning and showing how they master certain things, we start to build those soft skills very, very early. Because when you get to adulthood is very, very hard to reframe why it's so important to communicate and be able to talk to other people who are not like you. But it's still equally important that we learn how to do that.
Thanks, Jan. So a number of the points that you mentioned, as well as some that Tanya has put in the chat and Quincy and Trey have spoken to, are all good skills, both soft and technical skills that you're looking for. But I've got to ask, are you finding it? Are you able to really find those individuals right now as you're hiring? And I'll ask Trey that question first.
Sure. Yeah, for us, I guess it's yes and no. I don't want to dodge the question, Cerise, but we're finding some things and we're growing what's not there, I guess is the honest answer. We're finding talent, and we're finding talent in a number of different avenues. We've got two incredible interns, this summer, or actually this spring, and they're going to stay through the summer. And virtual environments allowed that, and so they're still this week is finals week, so we're trying not to ride the interns as hard as we normally do, but I mean, they're great. We've got one from UAB, we've got one from Alabama. We interviewed others, so we had a good crop there, and so feel confident there. But the delta between where they're at, and I think they're a little bit more comfortable with failing, like we were talking about earlier, where my young kind of entry level, next level employees are. We've had to grow a lot of it because they had stellar resumes, they were high GPAs, super performers, and all this kind of stuff. And so you got one of two things. You've got the skill set to do anything, and they know it, and they're smart enough to be the CEO coming in day one. And so how do you wait that out and help them understand that, hey, what you're doing today on Monday is building towards that, but we got about 20 years until you can become the CEO here, and so but then also because I have a high level of perfection, I'm not willing to fail, because if I fail, that's going to cost me long term, and so that part, we're doing that. But on the technical side, I've yet to stump anybody. I've yet to give them a problem they couldn't figure out, as long as they understood that there wasn't going to be a perfect answer at the end of it. And so some of the things we're doing, some of the things we're coaching, but I'm encouraged, and I'm really encouraged by these interns right now. Both of the ones we got, different skill sets, but are churning out some really, really good stuff.
Thanks, Trey. Quincy, what about you? Have you been able to find them?
My answer is kind of like Trey's. It's a bit of a yes and no. We're looking, as far as technical, we haven't really been fortunate enough to find people with all of the technical skills that we've been looking for and we've been requiring. But we have found young individuals who are motivated and hungry to come in with a good foundation and continue to build on that foundation and learn more. And I think those are some of the soft skills that we've concentrated more on going forward versus the technical aspect. So we're looking for people who have motivated, hungry, and willing to continue to learn. And that's one of the biggest things. Just because you get a position or a job, you don't want to be complacent and just be satisfied with what you currently know. In technology, you got to be continuously being hungry and have the desire to learn in this ever-changing world of technology. So we've had a few. Recently, we hired some young individuals straight out of college who were hungry. We went through a lot of applications, but it just takes a little bit more time than it used to. But we're having a little bit of success.
If you look at that, and you made some great points, Quincy, I think one of the things when it comes to being able to find those individuals and finding those individuals that are truly hungry about what they're doing, our ability to equip not only K through 12, but our collegiate systems is very important. How we develop that entire pipeline. I'd ask you, Jan, have you been able to leverage any of our local colleges and universities or academic institutions to help fill those gaps and voids that you've been seeing when you can't exactly go out and reach and find the right skilled individual?
Oh, absolutely. And there are actually some people who started with my past companies as interns, like Trey and Quincy mentioned, that have turned out to be the most outstanding technical people. They had little exposure, but the key is they were good for the culture. They fit into the culture. They had the potential. Um, Even taking in short durations and working with them only over their breaks, they were just ready to jump in and learn something new. And so just going in with that mindset was very important. So yeah, we were able to coach them, groom them. I've had positive experiences with all the interns that I've worked with personally. A lot of them have gone on to become full-time employees with the companies also in the past. That's one of the things that I think we as industry partners can do a lot better job at, is tapping into the local universities, and even earlier than that, tapping into the local high schools. For example, like the AFCEA scholarships that we have for graduating seniors. I mean, can we not do that a little bit earlier? I am always one to go into the school systems, and we're going into school systems, we're meeting with kids. I'm actually looking at some talent too while I'm doing that. So again, I don't think it starts too early. How formalized do we get in our whole process in identifying people? Yes, internships, something a little bit more formal, but what other programs can we have to make sure we're identifying and grooming that early talent? So it has been outstanding. I will continue to do it with every company that I go to. We've seen great success with it. Absolutely.
That's great to hear. I know something that we do locally is to have a university technical steering group, and Tanya Lambert has been a part of that before. Quincy has been a part of that as well. And a lot of that is really to be able to say, so let's identify where the industry is going, but then let's also identify what's being taught in the classroom. How do we ensure that there's some real world application to that? And I know Tanya put into the chat where BES, essentially the organization at Gunnar that does software development, they have been able to leverage schools. They've been able to speak to schools about additional training that they've needed. They've also been able to partner with local schools to ensure that they are teaching some of the items and some of the skills that are necessary that will, one, make those students employable. But I'll ask you this, Quincy, as you've been able to at least sit in on one of your first meetings with the University Technical Steering Group, and your ability to speak to those colleges, both in the community college system as well as on the four-year traditional college system, can you speak to some of the industry level certifications that a lot of colleges are starting to look a little bit more at to align some of their curriculum to ensure that their students are marketable and label once they graduate?
Yes, I think the junior colleges such as Trenum are doing a great job because they're more agile versus the four-year universities. They're doing a great job of transitioning their curriculum as well as their certification requirements within their modules to better give their students an upper hand and an ability to come out of school with a 2-year degree with certifications that make them more marketable in the job force. And I was pleasantly surprised because I actually sit on a couple of those panels and boards that the 2-year system is kind of ahead of the 4-year system for whatever political realm or whatever you think it is. The 2-year system is doing a great job of transitioning and pivoting their curriculum to better achieve market success with their students. And I have talked with a few universities about changing their curriculum and implementing a couple of certifications, but it's a little bit harder and it's more challenging for them, to get teachers as well as change their curriculum. But 2-year universities are doing a great job of it right now.
So as you talked about industry level certs, and we all know how important it is, I think even for you, Trey, you'll see it on the Alabama Power side of the house that maybe there's not a certification that's as well known from an innovation perspective, but are there certain specs that you're looking at from an industry level side of the house that at least pushes you towards that end, that you'd like to say, hey, K through 12 and colleges, please start to look at this and to move towards this, because that'll make those more employable for you?
And so in terms of, accreditation, certifications, and that kind of stuff, I don't think we're quite that in granular right now. But if I'm looking at two candidates, and whether that's for an intern out of college or somebody that's in college that we're looking to hire, I'm looking to see exactly the types of programs that people are putting in the chat right now. Did you participate in Best Robotics? Did you participate in all of these tech competitions and hackathons? Hackathons, the word I was searching for, didn't get until now. But did you participate in those events? Because that tells me something, that you're interested. You're interested in doing something outside of what's assigned in your current curriculum in a K through 12 environment. You're interested in working with other people, because I don't have anybody on my team that works in isolation at all, including me, who's working in his kid's playroom right now with dinosaurs in the background. But anyway, we don't work in isolation ever. And so I need that skill set. I don't need somebody that is a one person, one man, one woman show at all. And so showing me, in a junior high school environment, that you're comfortable working on team, you're comfortable with rolling up your sleeves and digging into a problem with somebody, finding a solution. And then I think Jan hit it on the head, presenting that solution to somebody that wasn't in the room in a format that is consumable, so that I understand it, I can follow it, whether or not I'm not an IT professional. I lead a lot of them, and I'm very reminded that I'm not an IT professional. A lot of times I'm like, slow it down, stop the jargon, communicate very, very clearly. Can you communicate at a 5th grade level? Can you communicate at a C-suite level? Those are the types of people and the only way you develop that skill, is practice, period. And so are we doing that in a K-12 environment, whether it's presenting a project or presenting whatever, or are we working in teams? And the same thing from college, right? Everybody and their brother hates a group project. I understand it. We all have horror stories about horrible group project experiences that we've had in college and definitely in our MBA program. But having that ability to grind, that is the closest thing that I can simulate what being on my team is like. That's the closest thing, And so, during this world, because we're not rumbling one another, we're adding up one another, teammates, and other folks are getting promoted out and all this kind of stuff. We hit a pause button last week, and all of us did an Enneagram exercise, just so we can figure out how the heck you think and I think, and when you say this is what you mean, and this is what I hear, and here's why, and all this kind of stuff. We took a whole day, just because we need that in order to have those team dynamics. And so, Teresa, I'm sorry, I got on a soapbox, and we'll come back to center there. But if you're looking at those environments from a K through 12, what are you doing outside of school? And are you around others? Are you solving problems? And then are you building on that when you're in college, such that when you come into my team, I can teach you the ins and outs about fiber. I can give you fiber for dummies, and in a couple of days, you're coming back to me. What I can't teach is, are you comfortable contributing and leaning on a teammate and celebrating their win just like your win, and all of this kind of stuff? That's the kinds of things that can be developed along the way that are vital. I'd much rather have that. I can teach you coding, but you need to learn. You need to be a teammate when you join our team.
Thanks, Trey. Now, I think based on something that Tanya also put in the chat, talking about social platforms, I think something that's very important is being able to teach students how to leverage those platforms, and that they're not just social related, but they could really be used as a resource. Jan and I probably have the biggest love-hate relationship with social media, because I love to hate it, and she absolutely hates that she loves it so much. But Jan, I'd love for you to comment a little bit about, one, how are you able to educate students on how to really leverage those different social media platforms for good, but then two, to help to get themselves out there and to learn a little bit more about what's going on in computer science and IT?
Yeah. So one thing is very important that I tell all young people, it's a very different world. You have a digital footprint everywhere you go is very important. So one, there are going to be employers maybe 10, 15, 20 years from now that are able to go back into your digital footprint. So one, be responsible in how you use your platform. And that goes for everybody, but especially
Well, I think we lost Jan, but he was reaching a point that I kind of agree on. You got to make sure you watch your digital footprint because employers and people who are interviewing you always Google you nowadays.
to the younger generation is very important.
I think she's coming back. They look at your Facebook profile, they look at your Instagram profile, they look at everything about you online. So you got to make sure you're watching what you put out there. But I also think the digital platform and these social media outlets also hamper us as well. And when I say hamper, it does not teach us good social skills. It does not teach us manners. It does not teach us customer service. Because my IT firm provides a service to a customer. Sometimes you might not be the most technical savvy person, but if you have the good customer service skills, you can ease that person who's having technical issues and just help have somebody else assist you with the problem because what you're here to do is to provide a service. If you don't know how to talk to people, if you don't have good manners, you're not used to communicating with people because you're doing everything through social media, that is not enabling you to do your job. So I also think social media platforms hampers, especially our youth nowadays, because they don't have any social skills. And part of their job sometimes is just knowing how to communicate with people. I'm sorry, I just picked up
Some
because
really good points you made, Quincy. I will tell you something that I've made comments about before, and those of you that know my son who's 16, and I try to him like, yeah, so we don't write and type like we're reading the ESPN bottom line, right? It can't be like that all the time. So getting students to learn how to truly communicate and communicate in the way that everyone else is, and to the point where you can do it in a professional sense early on is so important. And while they use social media all the time, being able to take that and use it for good and really let it be a resource could truly, make or break them some days, but it also gives them an edge on others that aren't doing that type of research and aren't looking to the next step on being able to go throughout their career. Now, I'll have to ask you this, Trey, since you've done a lot on the technology and innovation perspective as well. Are you seeing that landscape change? Are you seeing differences than maybe what we were looking for 2-4 years ago as to what we're looking for today and tomorrow?
Yeah. So the answer is yes. Heck yes. We're seeing changes. I mean, it's changing like the weather. Honestly, it's unreal. And so, I mean, if you had told me, a year and a half ago that I'd be doing what I'm doing right now, not, and sitting in a playroom with dinosaurs in the background and comfortable with it, like it is, yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy to think of. And so, but not only I think we've talked about the virtual work environment at nauseum. I don't think there's anything that I can say now that you haven't thought or experienced yourself. But what's crazy for me is, as we got an email from our CEO this morning that said we're going to start the reentry process in May the 10th. And so my folks won't go back 8 to 5 then, but some folks will. I don't know if my team will ever be 8 to 5, in the office again. And the reason being, and I'm very spoiled in this, I lead a very, very talented team and a very driven team. And so they're more productive in this environment, infinitely more, to the point where kind of one of the longest standing members on our team is, told me he was going on vacation next week. And I had to tell him, Christian, you cannot bring your laptop to the beach. you and your fiance have not gotten away in 2 years, you cannot bring your laptop to work, to the beach. Stop. I don't want to see anything from you, because they're working all the time. I mean, I don't think myself included, I don't think we've worked less than 100 since we came home a little every year. But my even though we're productive, it's not sustainable. And so the times where I think we have a really good feel right now for what needs to be an email, what needs to be a text message, what needs to be a simple call, what needs to be a video call, what do we have to do in person? And so how do we learn from that and then leverage everyone's time? Because we're productive, but for me and for my team, this is the same exact room that we have pizza movie night with our 2 kids. This is the same exact room where I watched the golf tournament yesterday afternoon. And then I have to morph in my mind to get into presentation mode or work mode and all this kind of stuff. All of our worlds have blended. And so how do you turn one of them off and turn one of them on and solve that balance? And so for me as a leader, because of these deltas, I've got to be honest with my team. I'm able to tell Christian, don't take your laptop on this trip, because they held everything together a couple of weeks ago when I had some time with my wife and my family. And I got to focus completely on them and kind of lead by example of, like, look, guys, just because you've got this in your laptop and you can take them in Wi-Fi everywhere, choose the times when you're going to work, choose the times when you're going to be off. And then ultimately that's going to make us all more productive in the end and get to where we need to go, and then still have families and marriages and actually lives that are supported by the efforts that we're doing. But simple answer to a simple question, Sharice. Yes, things have changed. Things change daily, and I don't think they're ever going to be undone or unchanged. And I think that's actually probably a really good thing. So I'll close there.
All right, so we are almost at the end of our session. I wanted to thank all of our panelists for hanging in there with us through the initial technical difficulties, but then 2, for all the great comments that they made. There's so much that's changing, and I think someone put in the chat, the only thing that's constant is change, especially in the IT realm. There's a lot that's changing, but what's not changing is the fact that all of us on the panel today not only care about the state of Alabama, but we care about our ability to educate our students K through 12 and on the collegiate level when it comes to STEM education, and especially computer science. So I think everyone here was certainly reachable and approachable. And if there's anything that we can do for you as teachers, as educators, and those others that are within the academic community, please don't hesitate to reach out. We truly not only care about the students that we have, but we care about developing the workforce pipeline that we have throughout the state of Alabama. Again, thank you for joining our session. Appreciate you hanging with us through the technical difficulties, and we look forward to working with you and hearing from you in the future. Have a wonderful afternoon.